Hello and welcome to the 43 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1Baseball Podcast. I am your host, Michael Patrick Rooney III. Tonight's episode brought to you by our good friends at S2 Cognition. S2 Cognition delivers a revolutionary approach to helping athletes understand how in-game decisions impact their performance from youth levels all the way to the pros. Thanks again to our good friends at S2 Cognition. This evening, I am joined by the three musketeers of college baseball, the great Aaron Fitt, the great Jose Joseph J. Healy, and the mayor of East Texas, Kendall Rogers. Gentlemen, how we doing? Good to see you.
Kendall strikes me more as a county sheriff of East Texas.
Ooh, I like that.
So if we're the three musketeers, does that make you D'Artagnan? Is that how that works?
Oh, wow. If I'm being honest, my command of the whole cast is bad. So sure, yeah, I'll be D'Artagnan. If you say that.
College baseball link to that name is that Texas Southern a couple of years ago had a guy on their roster named D'Artagnan Padron.
I remember that. Yeah. Good pull, Joseph.
And they wear dark. I'm just going to say this out loud. Texas Southern wears dark pinstripes as kind of their road uni, which are phenomenal. Anyone wearing gray pinstripes, I want you to just stop what you're doing, put them down and walk away. Gray pinstripes is bad. It's that like if you did it this year, it's too late, but let's not do that next year. Just
by the way, speaking of jerseys, am I the only one who got duped on April Fool's Day by those Ohio jerseys look like prison uniforms?
Oh, those are real things though, right? Like, aren't they real? They didn't make them up just for. They've had them in the past.
Well, one of their players tweeted at me and said, "Trust me, we've never worn those." So
the LSU prank was the best one. Did you guys see that one?
Well, with Paul Skeens in center,
hitting
that
third,
was pretty good.
Did you see that, Joe?
I actually didn't. I didn't see that. No.
So
I saw
LSU,
the Ohio U thing, but yeah, nothing.
Yeah, LSU put a lineup card out for April 1st that had Skeens hitting third and playing center field. And if you follow the comments, there was people freaking out. What happened to Dylan Cruz? It was excellent.
Speaking of names, like Joe, by the way, on your contract for D1Baseball, like the first thing on there was you had to bring over that little name story that you did at BA. Where you had like the bet, it was like the 100 weirdest names in college baseball or something.
That is a good.
That was a great feature.
Yeah, shout out to the emeritus of the names list, Itchy Burtz. No longer in college baseball, but shout out he has like an emeritus position.
He finally graduated after his third PhD.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Boys, I have an inane banter topic I'd like to cover, just an area I'm curious about in your lives, and then we'll get to the baseball. Here's my question. Currently, as we sit here right in this moment, how many unread text messages are on your phone?
Oh, Jesus.
Fitzy. I know you're using a BlackBerry still. Does BlackBerry have
BlackBerry? Get out of here with that.
Hey yo.
I've only got a couple. Looks like two.
Two. Joe?
Aaron's got like the little even older than BlackBerry, one of those old sidekicks, it was like the first text messaging thing where it slid open. And,
yes.
Remember the Trio?
Oh, so great.
Yeah,
do not.
I used to have a Trio back in the day. It was like the first like Palm device. It was so crappy. Like it literally would reset like once a month.
Oh,
I do remember that actually. I think
I did have the early like between flip phones and smartphones, like we had the Androids that had like the slide down keyboard or the flip open keyboard. I was a big physical keyboard guy. I was late adopter to like the touch screens, which is why I got into the Android ecosystem, and I'm still rocking it.
I know you're
Joe.
how
many unread do you have, buddy?
The Android ecosystem. That's a phrase.
Yes.
Zero. One is I probably don't get nearly the text message volume that you folks do, but also I just can't. I'm not someone who deals with the unread message icon or like the little any sort of icon on my reminders, on my email, all that stuff. I don't like having that number there. Now if it, you guys know as well as I do, Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, we're getting all kinds of emails from SIDs and all that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit of an exception to the rule, but generally speaking, I don't like that stuff hanging out there. So
I attend your church, Joe. It drives me crazy to have unread text messages. Kendall, out yourself. No, don't answer, Kendall. Joe and Fitzy and I are going to guess. I'm guessing Kendall has 77 unread text messages. Fitzy, what do you say?
Bob, I'll go 78.
Wait, what did you? No, hold on. What did you just say, Runes?
I said 77.
Joe?
Joe?
Okay, well so we know that number's close because he reacted to it in such a way.
Yes.
So 78 is the number to hit. I'll go 74.
I'm gonna say this. This is okay. No, I'll wait for Kendall. What do you got, Kendall?
77.
Oh my lord!
And
Wow.
is that an average day for you, Kendall, or is that about
That's
where
about
we
normal.
live?
What's funny is I'm like embarrassed to see like who I have missed texts from.
Oh.
Like I texted 2 top 5 coaches last week. They responded to me. I did not respond back to them.
Martha
So
herself
sorry,
needs.
guys.
Martha needs a secretary of her own. Like
Yes.
she's overworked.
She is overworked.
I
That
will
is
say during
amazing.
the summer, like especially during Omaha when the coaching carousel gets fired up, I mean it's probably 130.
This guy can't handle having more than 2 tabs open at once. Like he can't handle having it like an email
Exactly.
box. And yet he's got all these text messages.
Yes. So you and I are like the opposite on different devices. Like Aaron like leaves every email in his inbox, but he has 2 unread messages. I literally cannot stand having more than like 4 unread messages in my inbox. And my inbox has to be like literally 20 emails or it drives me nuts. But then I have 77 missed text messages. So that's just how I roll.
I've got 78,369 unread messages in my Gmail, but you know what? It doesn't matter because it's just searchable. Anything I need, you just search for it. That's the beauty of Gmail. Why would you ever
Are
delete
you
anything?
making that number up? Are you really?
I am not.
You really? Oh my god!
78,369.
As Augie Garrido used to always tell me, I'm inconsistently inconsistent.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is great. 78,000. Who knew?
That's just asinine. This
Why
dude's
bother?
totally that
Why
dude
would I
just
waste time?
someone has given Aaron the ultimate scoop and it's just gotten lost in the inbox somewhere.
Why would I waste time deleting a message? You just go to the previous day's messages and click on anything that's interesting. I mean, like, it's
Oh
a
my
waste of
gosh.
time.
That gives me like a panic attack without even looking at it.
Oh my
Your
gosh.
don't get me started on your tabs in Omaha whenever we're trying to do all-American teams and he's got like 90 tabs. Like literally his tabs on the Chrome browser are like a tiny little centimeter wide line because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
Man, Fitzy, you'd be good at squeeze play because that you got to have tabs open. You got to be able to maneuver 32 tabs at once. But Fitzy, we're going to come back to this. We're going to play a game in a later podcast where the 3 of us, not you, we're going to guess humans who have sent an email to you that has gone unread. We can get really.
So here's a question: which college baseball coach do we think would have the most unread, and the guy that would be the most OCD about having none unread?
Augie Garrido never read an email. I'm comfortable saying that.
He didn't know how to turn on a computer. Mark Franklin, I think, turned on the computer for him.
I'm pretty sure Mark Marquez probably falls under that umbrella as well.
Tim Corbin has a completely cleaned out inbox, guaranteed.
Yeah. There's no doubt. Jay Johnson is another guy that I'm pretty sure has answered every text message in his life.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Very interesting. Very good. All right, good. Well, that was fun. That was interesting. 77. By the way,
great podcast this week, guys.
Yeah.
So long, everybody.
S2 Cognition. By the way, I'll cap it with this. Our good friend Jake Mintz, who's a young man, by the way. Jake Mintz has over 600 unread text messages. He is an eccentric cat, the great Jake Mintz.
Well, he's a baseball coach in his time at Harlem Little League, so he just doesn't have time to read them.
Kidding me? Harlem Hellfighters, man. I'm on board. We're just winning travel tourneys left and right. Getting the lead out on bunts.
Real quick before we move on, I feel like if you have that many unanswered text messages, I feel like you're kind of in one of 2 buckets. One is that you are so in demand, like Kendall during coaching carousel season. You're so in demand that you just cannot get to all of them, right? Yeah. And maybe that's the case with Jake too. But the other bucket is just like devaluing like your kind of digital presence, which I think is a positive, by the way. Like just kind of being present with like what's in front of you, your job, your family, in this case, coaching the Harlem Hellfighters, shout out. And it feels like Jake is probably more in that second bucket, but I'd love to know because I really don't think there's a whole lot of options between those 2. I think those are the only 2 real reasons you end up with that many unread texts.
Well, so real quick, the problem you run into when you have that many text messages unread is like, how many people like go back to their text and like throw them through like 4 pages of text. So like I feel really bad during like coaching carousel season because I'll go text somebody that just texted me like 4 questions in a row like 2 weeks ago, and I never responded. Then all of a sudden I'm like, hey, is your assistant going to Georgia? And so I kind of feel bad, but like you just can't give to them all.
No. All right, boys, let's get to college baseball. I have a question for you. Okay. So our rankings this week came out around April 1st, which is April Fool's Day. And the rankings, no offense, kind of look like an April Fool's type of deal in how there's no human alive that would have guessed these rankings 4 months ago. No one alive would have said, hey, Wake Forest is a layup at number 2. That, South Carolina is a layup at number 6. Maybe you should have them higher. No one would have said BC at 9, Kentucky at 10. No one would have said you might have Kentucky underranked at 10. So here's my question for the group. Open discussion. Which of those, let's just focus on the top 10. Which of those is the most jarring to you? And you could pick one that I didn't mention.
Most jarring?
Most
I would say
shocking.
Boston College. I mean,
Yep.
to be picked at the bottom of the ACC, and rightfully so, right? Based on what they had coming back and what they had accomplished last year. Like BC being in the top 10 is incredible. And what's really interesting when you look at them is like whether, offensively, I think they've got enough. But like if you look at them on the mound, it's not like they're some team loaded with, high profile arms. They're not loaded with huge arms. And yet they just continue to win. I mean, they have not lost a series, or they have not had a losing weekend all year as a Northern school who's already behind the 8 ball when the season starts. So for me, that's the most impressive.
Yeah, I think that is the right answer, I think. But shout out to Kentucky being in this conversation, just because I think if no other reason, even if you believed in the most optimistic projection of what they could be, just given the amount of turnover they had, the amount of portal guys they brought in, I think even if you had an optimistic projection, I think you might have thought, okay, well, they might start slow, but maybe by April or May when they gel, they'll come together and maybe they'll kind of like last year, right? Where they made that run in Hoover and they came together. And it was just a little too late. I thought maybe that was going to be the case again, but they've started really, really quick. Obviously that team's really come together. So that I feel like BC is probably the answer, but Kentucky's right there.
Yeah, I mean, they were. I think Kentucky was picked to finish 13th out of 14 in the SEC by just about everybody. Either 13th or 14th by just about everybody, including the coaches. So yeah, I mean, I agree. Like it was a team that was totally unknown, ton of turnover. Yeah, I agree. I think BC and Kentucky, but I would probably have to pick one. I'd say BC is maybe the bigger surprise, just because I just didn't believe in their pitching. They were so bad on the mound last year. They were so bad on defense last year, and they've been so much better in both those areas this year. It's shocking. Wake Forest is not a surprise. I mean, it's a preseason top, 6 team. I mean, they were, and even if you thought like Kendall that ranking was too ambitious, I mean, shoot, last year they were, I think they finished top 5 in the RPI last year. I mean, like they were 2 seed in a regional who maybe should have had more of a case to host than they really got, considering they were like, I think they finished regular season like 2nd or 3rd in the RPI. They were way up there. It's not like they came out of nowhere. This team they had a ton back from a team that was already very successful last year.
Yeah. And I'll go ahead, Runes.
Yeah, I was going to say on Wake, the thing that you're everything, I can't dispute anything you just said, Fitzy, but I would say this about Wake. They've been very volatile over the last 6 years. They've had high highs and low lows, and they're the opposite of volatile right now. Like Wake is the set it and forget it team at number 2. Like we're not even thinking about Wake at number 2. It's just like it's a yawn, and that's the thing that's like each week I'm more convinced about Wake. Man, it's just they're so complete. They're so good. They check every single box. So anyway, that's my thought. I'm just like the set it and forget it part of Wake is shocking to me.
That part, I think you're right on. Like the thing that is, somebody asked in the chat today, is Wake Forest the most complete team in college baseball? And I was like, you know what? They might be, because you think about everybody else, like there's some issues about, Florida and the bullpen or whatever, the rotation or what, LSU Sunday starter spot, whatever. There's no question mark right now with Wake Forest. There's nothing. Like we were worrying about their defense. They had the one bad week. They had one hiccup week on defense where they made a bunch of errors. Other than that, I mean, they're still fielding like 979 or something. Like they've been good. I mean, like that was the only thing that maybe we were worried about. They lose Teddy McGraw. No big deal. We got Sullivan. We got Hartle and Louder. I mean, the bullpen's still good. Like they hit, they have power, they have speed. I mean, they do everything. So yes, I think they're the most complete team out there, as wild as that is. And I agree that part is, it feels weird because that's just traditionally not, they haven't been that elite program.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll say this too. I'll talk about Kentucky real quick, but also throw South Carolina in this bucket too, because I think it says a lot about Nick Mingione and Mark Kingston that in a season where if both of those coaches or either of those coaches struggle, let's be honest, they're probably gone. And I think that when you have that kind of pressure, it can be difficult, to start the season. There's a lot of pressure on you as a coach. I feel like you have a tendency to, if something goes bad in a game, I feel like you have a tendency to be a little bit panicky. But give those two guys a lot of credit for having their teams ready and for getting off to the starts that they've gotten off to here in the first half of the season. But South Carolina, for me, guys, when you look at the fact they're 26-3, this is a program that won a couple of national championships, and yet this year is their best start in SEC history. Mm-hmm. That's pretty impressive. And the other thing I really like about this team is they came back in the series opener against Missouri. Joe was there. They came back in the series opener against Missouri when they were down. At Mississippi State last weekend, they got blown out in the second game. You know what? And you're kind of thinking like, oh, okay, we'll see how South Carolina handles this. Well, what happens? They come back in the series finale. They win 14-5. All of those different little things right there tell me how different of a team this is than last year and the year before that's club.
Yep. I would say this on South Carolina and Kentucky. If I gave each of us that Men in Black wand and we were devoid of the last 5 or 6 years of history, like we didn't know it, and I just explained to us how the South Carolina and Kentucky teams are built. Hey, they can really pitch. They've got pitching depth. They've got older position players that have different styles, but they play good catch and they know who they are offensively. I think all of us would be like, oh, heck yeah. Mark me down for that. I'll get me as much of that as you can. But, I'll speak for myself. I am a little tainted by, these players haven't been in the super regional, in a while, those types of things, blah, blah, blah. But man, I guess what I'm trying to say about Kentucky and South Carolina is I really like the way they're built. I think these teams are built for the long term, personally.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's one thing about South Carolina. Look at their next 3 weekends, fellas. LSU, Vandy, and Florida. That's unbelievable. Yeah. But I'm trying to think back, is the LSU series for South Carolina, that's got to be the most anticipated series since the Ray Tanner era, right? Am I missing a series? Am I missing a year?
It's pretty good.
It's got to be in the conversation. There was and I only say this because I was there, so it's a little bit of bias in that regard. But the 2021 Arkansas team that was so good went to Columbia in mid-April back then, and South Carolina was fringe top 10, I want to say. So that would be the only one I can think of that's in the. Your point stands though. This is on a different level.
I was there too, and that was one of my favorite recent moments was the South Carolina fans chanting Oompa Loompa at Robert Moore.
Yeah, and Bob Moore went off on him.
He hit that bomb, right?
He hit a bomb right in their smug faces. It was awesome. It was awesome.
Oh, man,
he threw his watered-down drink right in their smug faces.
It reminded me of I was watching Wake Forest at Clemson this past week, and they started chanting or somebody yelled some derogatory short guy term at Tommy Hawk, and what do you think he did? The next pitch, he's like, "I'm gonna rip a double," just right in your grill. Let's go.
I love it.
Speaking of short people getting picked on, were you allowed to get near the field to take pictures, or were you ushered out?
We're not gonna relitigate that one.
Boys, I have an LSU question for you. Okay, I'm gonna overthink something for a second. I want you guys to coach me through this. LSU is I'm gonna nitpick them and say this. I think they're and by the way, Jay Johnson overthinks it better than any of us. So he's thought of this. I'm not breaking news for Jay Johnson. I'm worried. I'll use the word worried. I'm worried that LSU is built for blowouts, and that this could be a problem at the end of the year when games aren't blowouts. Here's what I mean by that. Where they're strong they're so overwhelmingly strong, they can just bludgeon opponents to death. But we are talking about a team whose Sunday starter in week 6 or week 7, whatever we're in, didn't get an out. I mean, Thatcher Hurd did not record an out on Sunday or Saturday, whatever it is. Their bullpen is a bunch of rotating freshmen. I mean, their bullpen is still an area of concern. And when they play Trey Morgan in left field, that infield defense is really interesting. I mean, you've got Jared Jones, who's like an offensive tackle at first base. You've got an outfielder at second base. You've got a guy with a really checkered defensive past at shortstop, and you've got a DH at third base. And I think Tommy Tanks is fine at third base, but you're certainly not getting any range. And what if you run into a team that can pressure you with the inside game? Can you play that defense against a team that can pressure you with the inside game? I don't know the answer to that. And Jay Johnson's really, really smart. But tell me I'm overthinking this.
Let me ask you this, Runes. Do you know where LSU ranks in the country at fielding percentage?
Extremely high, right? They're like 980, something like that.
So where do you think they rank?
Is that top 30?
Gavin Dugas still errorless?
Anyone else have a guess on this one? Joseph?
I'm going to go 22.
Yeah, 26.
Numero uno, friends.
Really?
986. 986. How are they fielding 986? How?
Yeah.
That's quite a change in fortune.
Now, I'll say this about Jordan Thompson. He's been very streaky, good and bad defensively. Like he had a stretch last year. We had 17 straight games without an error. So when he's good, he's really good. Now, he had his moments this weekend. And, when we were in Round Rock, we saw them, I can't remember if it was Iowa or Kansas State. It was Iowa who, hey, by the way, it's a true freshman catching too. I don't know that they've played anybody that's really pressured them that way. Here's the other advantage, and this is where Jay's really smart. They don't run into a lot of bats either. Like it is a ton of swing and miss on that pitching staff. Yeah. So I don't know. It just makes me, maybe I'm just being old fashioned, but it makes me really nervous that that's your infield defense headed into the postseason.
I will say this: Gavin Dugas, by the way, still does not have an error.
We'll find out
infielder. That's pretty damn good.
Kentucky will be a stress test for LSU when Kentucky plays LSU, because Kentucky wants to play that way. They want to bunt and run and just kind of create some chaos in the bases. And so that'll be a test there for LSU. Now, the thing is, like, I kind of agree with you generally speaking, but it's just so tough because the thing about it is the teams that tend to want to push the issue that way also tend to be the teams that don't really play well from behind. And LSU is a team, of course, that you just can't play from behind against. Mm-hmm. So it kind of does like play into their hand a little bit, but we'll see.
Yeah. And here's the other card Jay Johnson can play. He can just take Trey Morgan from left field and put him at first base, and you take an average infield and you just kicked it up 3 notches, right? Like that dude's so good at first base. Makes everybody better.
And Wake Forest got that too with Nick Kurtz. Like I do think that's such an underrated thing, is having an elite defender at first base. I saw it just last week at Clemson. Like Kurtz saved at least 2 errors. It was like 2 really tough scoops, man. And it makes everybody play up. There's no question.
Yeah. I'm going to go back after we're done here and look this up, but I just feel like LSU has not played under a ton of stress this year. Like this series this weekend was supposed to be that, and it kind of was, but like Tennessee didn't play great in moments, and then Tennessee just bludgeoned them in the third game. So I don't know, it just didn't feel like there was that much tension this weekend, unless I totally whiffed on that. Again, I'm totally nitpicking. They're so good, right? Like
and you have to nitpick for a team that, I mean, here's the thing is, like, we mentioned they lead the country in fielding percentage. They also, of course, lead the country in on-base percentage, second in scoring, first in batting. ERA is 15th. I mean, like, they're just a lead in so many different ways. And yet, it's fair to say, all right, like, they haven't swept anybody yet in conference. Now, Tennessee, Arkansas, okay, we're talking about 2 elite teams, and then at A&M. So, like, I'm not reading into that, the fact that they haven't had a sweep yet. I think college baseball is about winning your weekends. 2 out of 3, that's fine against really good teams. And when they play lesser teams in the league, I would like to see them sweep some of those. But I know like there's some questions in the chat today from LSU fans. Oh, like, should we be worried about the fact that we're not sweeping anybody or this or that? Like, we're nitpicking. I mean, that's it. Like, this team is elite.
Yeah, so good. I mean, Dylan Cruz, just a joke. Paul Skeens, just a joke. I mean, they're, like we said last week, like they're tracking to have the first and second pick of the draft. It's just, it's nuts. And one's a hitter and one's a pitcher. It's just.
Yeah.
I will say this though, like I am actually firmly convinced at this point that the difference between like Wake and LSU is not much. Like I think it's a minimal difference when you look at how well Wake has played overall. Like, I mean, maybe that proves untrue as the season kind of progresses. But like, I think the gap between those two teams is a lot smaller than people might think.
I think that's a great point, Kendall. And I think, and I love the fact that you're the one who said it, but I think you're right. Like the fact that they've been winning games, like they've been winning clean, low scoring games, right? Like we know they can mash. They got a ton of power in the lineup, but like last 2 weeks, I mean, Miami, they beat 4-1 twice. They beat Clemson 4-3, 6-5. I mean, like, it's not like we have to get into those sloppy 14-8 games, like sometimes it almost feels like you see LSU do. Now, LSU also, again, like they're 15th in the country in ERA, like they're pretty good at run prevention. But like it does feel like Wake really has the ability to win those little like tight, low scoring affairs at a surprisingly efficient rate.
Yeah, I mean, think about those two teams playing in the CWS finals. You don't have to like dream this deep dream to pick Wake over LSU. Like it would feel uncomfortable to pick Wake, but like, I don't know, Hartle versus TBA. I mean, Cam Manassi versus, I don't know, who's the closer of the week. It's that stuff gets interesting.
Well, I mean, think about it this way too. I mean, I think revisionist history on the CWS finals last year was that, well, Arkansas and Ole Miss was really the CWS final because either of those teams was beating Oklahoma. And I think that's very well true. But that first game in the CWS finals was tighter than a drum and changed on a razor's edge. And then Cade Horton almost willed Oklahoma to a winning game too. Either of those games could have easily flipped. And Oklahoma could have either gotten to a third game or won the whole dang thing. And we all kind of believed that at that point of the season, Ole Miss was markedly better than Oklahoma at that stage of the game. And yet those results were both really, really close. So once you get into postseason baseball, I don't need to tell you guys this. It's just, you're a few innings away from disaster essentially at all times.
Yeah. What's interesting? We were talking about like offenses that, score a lot of runs and kind of get in sloppy games. I mean, one series that kind of stood out to me over the weekend, guys, was Stanford at OU. Stanford scored 39 runs in 2 of the games, and then only scored 8 runs in the other 2 games. What a bizarre weekend for the Cardinal.
Yeah, they're a strange team.
Load management.
I will say that's a weird. Again, these leagues with uneven weak, teams, and like it's just a disaster playing a non-conference team right in the middle of your conference season. It's just such a, I don't know. I'm making excuses for Stanford, but it's not great.
I'm also not entirely sure Stanford logistically because they always take a weekend off for finals. So I'm not really entirely sure how they're taking that weekend off and also played Oklahoma in the middle of their conference season. I mean, obviously they figured it out. Like I know that they're not going to get to the end of the season and be like, well, crap, we're missing a conference series, but it just strikes me as weird. That's all.
That was a weird series.
Well, then they play like Cal this weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Then they play a Monday, Tuesday series at home against Texas Tech. Like, that makes no sense at all.
Are they hosting Tech or Tech is?
Yeah, the Texas Tech's going to Palo Alto.
Seriously, I feel like my guess is that Tim Tadlock doesn't drink, but I'm like his schedules are like somebody.
Thank you, Rouge.
Takes him to Vegas and like blindfolds him and makes him do 7 shots of whiskey and then all right, Tads, go make your schedule. Like it is so. They went to Iowa last year. Like what? Texas Tech.
Who doesn't love our shitty Rouge?
Yeah, what?
Who doesn't love our city in February?
That's right. And now we're playing Stanford on a Monday. God bless.
Sorry, that wasn't my best Tim Tadlock, but I have a pretty good one when I'm rolling.
Yeah, I like it. Well, we'll revisit that. But I will say this about Tads, man. It is anybody, anywhere, anytime. Like literally anybody, anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, and you know, when you're so geographically isolated, you have to think
Yeah.
that way, I think, and they've done such a great job of it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they
Now,
don't, they're going to end up playing like 12 games a year against New Mexico and New Mexico State.
Yeah.
That's kind of the reality of where they're at.
Speaking of impersonations, we used to always make impersonations on Mike Martin. Florida State fans might be dreaming of the Mike Martin era right now. How about the struggles they've had, guys?
Man, I had that game. I had the Sunday game, and Miami just drilled them again. And I would say I came away impressed with Miami. I really like Miami's team. Now, Alejandro Rosario had his best career start, literally his 30th start, his best career start. I still would be very nervous about him as my Sunday starter in the postseason. It was, Linus Baker was the home plate ump. It's a very generous zone, consistent. I love Linus Baker. He's one of my favorite umpires, but it's a generous zone. It's a pitcher zone. And, and Florida State is just, they haven't given up. They're still fighting, but, they had 4 freshmen, true freshmen in the starting lineup. The first 2 pitchers, true freshmen. I don't care who Link Jarrett is as a coach. That's not working. That does not work in 2023 college baseball. So, Clemson's kind of feeling the same growing pains, and I don't know, the rebuild of these historic brands. And then you look at Stanky out at USC, and it's like, oh, hey, man, we just hired this great coaching staff, and we're back. So I don't know.
Can we play? I would love to play a game of buy or sell here with some of these upstart teams. I want to put everyone on the spot here. And start with USC, because that's a good one to bring up. Is USC, do they have staying power? Are they
just for 2023, right?
Are they a regional team in 2023? Buy or sell, Coach Rooney?
Sell. Coach
Sell.
Healy?
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine.
No, go ahead, Kendall, because I'm doing research for you.
Good way.
I would say sell, because other than guys like Austin Overn and guys like that, like, I think if you break down USC, there's not really anything about them that you go, wow, that's really impressive. And I just feel like teams like that, like, I just don't, long term, I just don't think it's going to work out. But we'll see.
They're
the
playing
Pac-12
so good
is
right now, though.
Yeah, they are. And the Pac-12 is just so volatile. I mean, Arizona State's playing much better right now.
13 of 15. I didn't even realize it was that crazy.
Yeah,
Shoes won 13 of 15.
Oregon State, you think, Oregon State's down in the mat. And what do? They go on the road and take a series in Washington. So, yeah, predicting the Pac-12 right now is very difficult. Wazoo took a series from UCLA over the weekend in Pullman. UCLA, by the way, suddenly looking a little sketchy, but they're banged up.
Yep.
To be fair to UCLA,
Joe, what'd you go with?
To be fair to UCLA, they had to melt ice off of players to get them unstuck from the bench. So
it was literally snowing in the 9th inning. Like, if you look at the video, it is snowing in the 9th inning of that game.
So I am regretfully selling.
Yeah.
Now, the trouble is their RPI is 88. And again, it's too early to over fixate on RPI, but that's a lot of ground to make up.
It's not too early. If it's 88, it's not too early.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's too early to like look at it as the beat, like, but it's not too early to start to understand like big, broad themes. And 88's just a lot of ground to make. I mean, they've got to go 50 spots essentially, and
especially as a West Coast team.
And the fact that they're 9-3 in the pack and they're still sitting there is kind of troublesome. What I will buy is actually not good for the Pac-12, and that's that I will buy that they are competent enough that they're going to continue to win games at a pretty high rate. I wouldn't be shocked to see them finish above 500. I mean, heck, they're 9-3 already, so they're basically, most of the way there. And I don't think that's necessarily a great thing for the Pac as a whole. Now, down the road, a competent USC is a great thing for the Pac-12. Mm-hmm. Well, until they go to the Big Ten, I guess. But it's a good thing for the West Coast. I'll say that. But this year, though, I think that might be more trouble, because I think there's a future where the Pac-12 ends up getting squeezed on some bids because teams like USC and maybe Arizona State play pretty well, but not well enough to actually be postseason teams, just well enough to, ruin everyone else's time to some degree. So I am buying them as a little bit of a thorn in the side, but I'm selling as a postseason team on their own.
So you make a great argument. And again, it's wild to me that they're 89th in the RPI when, like you said, not only are they 9-3 of the Pac-12, that includes a series win against Stanford. They have a road series that they played at Auburn. They didn't win it, but that's usually a good thing for the RPI. You go on the road and play an SEC team coming off an Omaha trip. Guys, I'm going to go on my rant again. Like, this is one of those situations where the RPI is just, you play one weekend against Marist, a team, by the way, that like is traditionally a solid enough program in that league. Like, they went 29-17 last year. I mean, 17-6 in their league. You schedule Marist. You're not trying to just schedule a bottom tier team. But Marist is 3-22. And those 3 games are just decimating USC in the RPI, and it's not an accurate reflection of the season that they've had, but it's going to doom them. And I am angry about that. I really want the committee to change the formula so that we get some kind of a grace period for these kinds of situations. I've talked about this every freaking year. It drives me nuts because we should be looking more at the top and the middle ends of your resumes rather than a few games at the bottom that just totally torpedo you. I mean, a gimme's a gimme, guys. Like you beat the number 150 team, you beat the number 250 team. There's not that big of a difference, and we shouldn't let the fact that one program is having a miserable year and you played them 3 times have a disproportionate impact on who can be a regional team. Anyway, I wanted to buy USC because I like where they are, but like you look at the RPI and you're right, like it sucks. I'm gonna have to sell.
It's going to get worse too, boys, because they've got a loss to UC Riverside on the docket. Yeah. Sacramento State's 179, Tulane's 201, Cal Poly is a win at 157. They've got Seattle U coming up at 215. To your point, Joe, like they're going to be a fascinating study for the committee because for them to finish 16-14 in the league, they've got to go 7-11 from here. Very doable for as well as they're playing. And then the committee's going to be looking at a 16-14 Pac-12 team with like a 60 RPI. I mean, 60 they probably get in, but 65.
No. Here's and while I would recommend everyone goes to D1Baseball.com and looks at the RPI there, our good friend Warren Nolan does the prediction tool. Basically, it sims out the season and predicts, and it's not perfect. Let me be very clear about this, but it is instructive from this standpoint. So right now it predicts USC based on results to go 19-11 in the pack. Now I'll take the under on that number
for sure.
But if they go 19-11 in the pack, that would be an RPI of 33. So that would be good enough, obviously, but that's probably 3 to 4 games aggressive, I would say, at least. And so we can knock that down to basically what it says is if they get to that 16-17 win margin in conference play, they're going to be feels like right on the cut line. So anything less than that, and it's troublesome.
Interesting. Fitzy, can I move off of your buy sell? Yeah, I got something in the same genre. So when I was thinking about the Big 12 and what I wanted to have us discuss there, here's where I landed. You can make a postseason wager on one Big 12 team, only one. Who are you betting on? Fitzy, I think I know your answer.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oklahoma State, piece of cake.
Kendall?
Oklahoma State. I like where they stand right now.
And Joseph?
Fine. I'll take Texas Tech. Just to be not totally, just to be a little bit different. It's just that I have a pretty good level of optimism that they'll find their way back up to the top of the standings. They always do. I like the chances that if they finish in the top couple in the Big 12, they could be in place to host. And if you host in Lubbock, you win the regional. That's just kind of a universal truth, except for that one weird year when Sam Houston came through the losers bracket to win the regional there, which the longer time goes, the more that seems like a weird little blip in history. But so yeah, Texas Tech. I mean, it's the program that never bottoms out, right? They're not looking great right now, got to admit, but they never bottom out. They're going to be right there. And if you're telling me they're going to be in position, they tend to at least meet expectations, if not exceed them, for what we think they'll do in the postseason.
Yeah. Fitzy and Kendall, is Texas Tech your second choice? It felt like you didn't have a second choice, like it was easy Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State was clearly my first choice. I'll say this. Like, I'm starting to like what I'm seeing out of Texas. I mean, I'll say this about the Horns. They know who they are. Like, they know what their identity is. They're executing the little things offensively well. Zane Morehouse has kind of been a mixed bag out of the bullpen. But they're starting to kind of settle into some roles on the mound. And, they could have very easily won all 3 games against Oklahoma State over the weekend. Like that was a dogfight till the very end. Oklahoma State walked them off to win the final game from Nolan Schubert's hit. So Texas is trending upward for me. Like David Pierce has done a great job. That's a club that kind of like a couple of years ago, like they looked awful at Globe Life. They looked like they were playing against big league teams as like a decent Division I team, and now they figured themselves out. But yeah, Oklahoma State for me is by far the top team. I think they figured things out on the mound. I think we all love their offense. Obviously, Nolan McLean being out is troublesome for me.
Do we have an update on that? Anybody heard anything?
So I was told today that it's not season ending, but he could be out a few weeks. So that's troublesome.
It looked
because
awful.
if he's out for a few weeks, then that makes me think like, that it's kind of like we've heard for a while that Hunter Elliott will be back at some point. Until he actually takes the mound, I'm not believing that he's coming back.
Yep. And it's his knee too. I watched that. Here's my thing on Oklahoma State. They're like the person I'm afraid to fall in love with. Like I just feel like they've broken my heart so many times. But like Rock Riggio, just watching him in that big game 3, like he is such a dude. Like he is a baller. Like he's that player that like emerges and says, "Look, boys, we're not losing today. So just whatever's in your brain, go ahead and empty it out. We're winning today." And that this conversation's over. Like every championship team has a dude like that, and he is that guy for me.
Yeah, in the second game, Riggio had like a 9-pitch at bat or something in the the 9th inning to get a runner on base, and they won that game. So yeah, I mean he had a couple of great at bats that I saw in that series.
Yep. All right, boys, let's do this. Before we come down the home stretch, we have another partnership, which we're super excited about. That's Blast Baseball. Hitters, if you're ready to dominate at the plate, Blast Baseball is trusted by more MLB and college teams than any other hitting solution. The Blast sensor attaches to the knob of any bat, providing real-time feedback with every swing. We also attach it to Kendall's phone to monitor text messages that are not being read. Go to blastmotion.com, enter the code D1Baseball at checkout. You'll save $10. Blast Baseball, really good stuff right there. All right, boys, you ready for the final game of the night?
Uh-oh.
So, no, this is good. So Northeastern is top of mind for me. Coach Farron and I got to speak to Mike Glavin today, and he's just the best. Like they're so on point. Like Northeastern, and I just feel like I gotta stop with the it's only Northeastern stuff. Like they've kind of become the marquee team in the Colonial, and I know that there's other really good teams in that league, but they've won it 3 times. I mean, it's not like there's some flash in the pan. That's what I'm trying to say. They're not a flash in the pan anymore. And they've figured out this grad transfer thing that Connecticut and BC have going, and it's working. Like they're old and they're good and they've got identity and blah, blah, blah. Here's what I'm getting at. Over the last 5 years in Omaha, 40 teams, only 2 of them have been from non-Power 4 conferences. So Fullerton in 2017 and Michigan in 2019. Every other Omaha team has been Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, SEC. 2 out of 2. And I'm thinking about this because of the college basketball thing where just the Final Four is jarring the teams that are there.
And how many in the last year? How many years?
Last 5 years, which is 40 Omaha teams.
I thought USB
16. So so I kind of gamed it a little bit. If I go back to 2016, you add 2, right? Because 2016 was UCSB and Coastal.
Gotcha.
So, and then you go to 2015, you get to throw Fullerton in there.
Yeah.
2014, you get to throw Irvine in there. But we're just on this cold stretch of the last 5 years. So, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set the over-under at 0.5. 0.5 non-Power 4 teams in Omaha this year. You want the over? It's a tough line to set. I'm pretty good at setting lines, if I do say so my damn self. This is a tough one. But let's go 0.5. I want to encourage the action here. Fitzy, what are you feeling here?
I'm going to take the over because the fighting Camels of Campbell are going to Omaha this year.
Yes, roll humps. They're going to roll right into Omaha. Are they hosting, Fitzy?
I think they probably are. Yeah, I think they're I don't know. I mean, the 14th in the RPI right now as we sit. I'm still a little nervous about how that's going to play out as the season unfolds in the Big South. But, I mean, you got to like what they've done, in the non-conference. I mean, they've beaten East Carolina twice. They went to Louisiana and won a series on the road there. Rutgers, who I know is been kind of up and down this year, but that's a nice series to schedule and win. I mean, I think they've kind of done what they needed to do, and they've got talent. And you know what? Maybe they go on the road and win a regional or super. But either way, they're going to be there this year.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's. I think they could run the table in the Big South. I know I'm disrespecting the Big South when I say that, but they just seem so good. Man, they're good. Coach Healy, do you have a wager to place here?
Sadly, I'll take the under. I would love to see it. Anyone who knows anyone who knows my history of enjoying college baseball and involvement there knows that I stump for the little guy, and I hate using that term just because we're talking about really good programs here. But I just think especially this year where it feels like every team we talk about, we talk about how they can really swing it. I really like the way they swing it, but there are some questions on the mound. And maybe Campbell's the elixir to that because they have power conference arms and not just Cade Keeler. So maybe they are a little bit of the elixir to that, but it just feels like the gulf has gotten really, really wide in terms of depth on the mound. And that's where you see it, right? I mean, you could go year by year, and because I'm a sicko, I've kind of done this. You can go year by year on the NCAA tournament bracket and look at regionals, and just about every year there's some mid-major program that goes 2-0 in regionals and just kind of falls apart the next 2 days. And that's pitching depth. And it's just so hard. If we go to the Runes plan of 32 hosts and we play 2 out of 3 every weekend, now we're cooking. But you play regionals the way we do, it's just so hard. The team I think of last year is Texas State. When it came right down to it, they had like 4 pitchers and they just couldn't hold on. It just kind of like they were holding onto the edge of the cliff with their fingertips and they just slipped off, and so anyway, that's a long-winded answer, but I'm going to go under, unfortunately, but I'd love to see it.
Yeah, UConn last year too. It's like they could taste Omaha, for God's sakes.
Thank you for leading me in. I'm going to go over.
Yes. Oh,
and I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go with UConn. The thing that's really interesting about UConn is if you look at their team last year, they got to they got to Game 3 against Stanford, and this is a team that lost like 2 of their top relievers. They lost Pat Gallagher. They lost Austin Peterson on the mound. You're thinking like, oh man, their pitching is a huge question mark. Well, all of a sudden, reigning assistant coach of the year, Josh McDonald has the 37th best ERA in college baseball right now. As a team that lost like their 2 top relievers and their 2 best starters, and they've already got it, several pieces back from an offensive standpoint. So I'm really impressed with them. I mean, it's just like clockwork. They're pitching every single season. And so I'd keep an eye on them. I think they're battle tested. They tasted it. They know how close they were, and I think they're going to be a very tough out for someone in the postseason.
We talk about Tennessee with the team after the team thing. Maybe UConn's a team after the team. They were on you said, they're on the brink of busting down that door into Omaha. They didn't quite get it done, get their hearts ripped out. Maybe this is the year. But I'm going to throw this out there too. If we're looking for a deeper sleeper, since we're on this discussion, I really, I think I talked about Dallas Baptist last week. I don't know if I did or not, but I really am intrigued by them for not a team that's currently not in the top 25, but is, knocking on the door for our rankings. A team that we had a little bit lower expectations for than usual this year. I don't think we picked them to win Conference USA. I think we had them in a regional, but maybe not. I mean, it's kind of a borderline regional team heading into the year. They had some questions to answer, but this feels like a vintage DBU pitching staff, and maybe it's not a vintage DBU offense. But if they're pitching well when it matters most, I think they've got the arms to do it. Like kind of like Campbell. I think that's a team that has the real depth. They've got a great bullpen and a few, and they've got 3 guys in the rotation that I think they feel pretty good about too, like talented power arms. And so that's another one just to keep an eye on. I'm confident saying this year one of those teams is going to get it done, Runes. I think we're
doing. And it goes without saying East Carolina will be in that mix too.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I know their offense isn't quite what it was last year, but Trey Yasevich is awesome on Fridays. I loved him over the weekend, and they've got 4, 5, 6 options out of the bullpen they can run with that are really good. So,
yep. I'm with you guys. I'm going the over too, because the teams you guys just mentioned, like we've got a lot of non-power 4 teams that have been in a bunch of regionals. Like those players will not be spooked by a regional. I also think this is a naive thought, but I'm going to share it. I think there's a lot of P4 teams that are vulnerable this year. Like I don't see a lot of these Power 4 teams that are just clicking and mauling people. I just see a lot of volatility in these teams. They're up, they're down, they're all over the place. I don't know.
I'll say this: if I am someone, and I praise Wake Forest so much, I'm just going to go ahead and say this: if I'm somebody like Wake Forest, I do not want someone like UConn or East Carolina in my regional.
Heck no.
Because they're just so battle tested, right? Like they've been through everything. They'll know how to handle a tight situation. So like if I'm a team like that who all of a sudden everybody just thinks I'm just going to blow everybody out, like I do not want one of those two teams on regional.
Yeah, and I also don't want the Harlem Hellfighters showing up in my regional either.
Yeah,
Coach Mintz.
That goes without saying.
Talk about battle tested.
What were we going to say, Aaron?
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I would just say it does feel like East Carolina, like if they wind up on the road to regional, like that, maybe that's what they need. Like as good as they are at home, as much as they love their home field advantage, like I could see them going on the road and just being like, coming in there with swagger, like, screw everybody and just like taking it home, man. Like I could see it. Like sometimes that's easier to do it on the road. You don't have the kind of the weight of everybody bearing down on you and everybody who's, wanted this for 40 years, like we got to get to Omaha, maybe that's how it happens. Maybe they have to go through a place like Wake Forest or something to do it.
Virginia or South Carolina, like all those are, especially Virginia, South Carolina, it looks like a perfect opportunity for them to go on the road to one of those places and win that thing.
I do think it's a mixed message, though, when you walk into the yard with a big swagger and chip on your shoulder and you're wearing lavender. It just feels doesn't feel as angry as what you're projecting.
The powder. Have you seen I'm sure you have seen the powder, or the powder purples they call them.
I appreciate the effort. Like I'm all for sticking your neck out uniform wise, and those are I dig them, but they don't scream chip on my shoulder.
They don't scream Cliff Godwin, that's for sure.
They are downright lavender, like loud, capital L, lavender, caps lock.
Oh my gosh!
I was actually disappointed in CG at U of H over the weekend. He was very laid back. What's up with that?
Yeah, maybe that's the new way. That's how you get there. So, boys, so let's wrap it there. I want to say to the listeners, this is an awesome time to get a subscription to D1Baseball.com and SEC Extra. I want to share with you why. So, for instance, I wrote the D1 Digest Friday evening, where we get you up to speed. You wake up Saturday morning, you get a cup of your favorite coffee, and you dive into the website, and you just let me talk to you. Let me have coffee with you on Saturday morning and break it down for you. And then
coffee
the great
talk with Coach Rooney.
Yes, coffee
Fireside
talk.
chats.
Yeah, get yourself a Wawa coffee and let's get after it. Let's start our day properly. And then Stitch kind of went up to me because he's the D1 Digest like the Stitch way or Sorensen says or something like that. And I didn't even know I could interject my last name into the D1 Digest headline. And then he referred to Old Man Weather as a repugnant jerk, which is even better. I love that phrase. But you also get vocabulary like the great Joe Healy and the what's it called? The weekend dish that you guys do, the kind of journal, Coach Healy?
Yeah, so we've got the Extra Bases blog that runs all weekend.
Ooh,
Mark does the weekend dish at the end of the weekend. That's a Mark Etheridge joint at the end of the weekend.
Gotcha. So the bases loaded is where I could get terms like elixir, like you just dropped on us a few minutes ago.
Oh, how good is that?
The good thing about Stitch is the only person I have to edit where it's like, okay, I got to get up very early in the morning to make sure there's not something in there that's going to make somebody really mad.
He's not afraid of a good cuss word, but I will also say that Shotgun Spratling he's a great writer. Shotgun is a sneaky, awesome writer, really capital J journalist, and he did that story on Northeastern, which was just phenomenal.
And his photos are awesome too.
Yes. Yeah.
No offense, Aaron, but his photos are better.
He invested in a freaking top of the line camera. They better be better.
He bought it from NASA. His camera. So, very good, gentlemen. Well done. Good to see you. Tune in for the preview this week. We will definitely do that again. That was fun last week with the great Steven Schock. Always a good time with him. That's it. Have a great week, everybody. We'll catch you next time on the